One day, a knight is seen chasing a girl deep within the forest. She stumbles and falls before him, and he corners her, but she surprises him by striking him across the face. In that very moment, the skin of his face is suddenly torn away by a spell he had cast upon himself, revealing his terrifying true nature. He then lunges forward with the intent to kill her, craving her mana so he can use it to fuel his spell. Suddenly, a man named Zagan appears behind him, grips the knight's head, and coldly tells him that he is causing a disturbance within his territory and keeping him from sleeping. The knight replies with contempt, claiming they are not of the same kind, and offers to share the girl with him if he lets him go. However, Zagan tells him that he wants nothing from him and instantly blows his head apart. The girl is horrified by what she has witnessed and collapses unconscious. Zagan uses his spell to remove the blood and restore the knight's face to its original state, then decides to move the girl away so as not to leave her defenseless against wild beasts in the middle of the road. Yet something strange occurs when the transportation spell fails. Zagan is puzzled by how this could happen, especially since he is within his own territory and has placed protective barriers around it that prevent any other spell from interfering. At that moment, his friend Barbatos appears, and Zagan asks him to stop interfering with his spell. Barbatos notices that the girl possesses an enormous amount of mana and asks what he intends to do with her. Zagan replies that using another person's mana is not his style, then transfers the girl using instant teleportation. Barbatos is irritated that Zagan did not leave her for him to take and exploit, so Zagan leaves him behind and goes off to sleep. Later, Barbatos asks him if he knows that one of the demon lords, named Marcosius, has died. He explains that the demon lords are beings who possess vast quantities of mana and hold authority over lower-ranked sorcerers, and that Marcosius was the eldest among them. Zagan is shocked and demands that Barbatos tell him the details. Barbatos explains that what will happen in the territory of Marcosius is the trade of certain goods that both of them are interested in, such as the inheritance of a demon lord. Zagan responds sarcastically, saying that he thought his friend had come to deliver news, not because he needed money. Barbatos admits that Zagan is the only one he knows who could lend him that sum, which is why he came. As they walk together, they see a knight running toward his commander, and Zagan notices clear tension throughout the city. Barbatos explains that this is due to people who have been kidnapping girls to conduct magical experiments on them. Zagan asks what their objective is, and Barbatos replies that he does not know, but suspects they are planning to summon something important, perhaps a demon. Barbatos then asks whether Zagan is suspected in the kidnapping incidents. Zagan answers that such an idea is foolish, because experiments on ordinary humans are pointless. After that, the two enter the auction hall, where they notice the presence of several notable figures such as Zemars the Black Panther, the Grimoire Mages, and Felfer the Phantom. Zagan asks if they are powerful, and Barbatos confirms that they are candidates to become one of the 13 demon lords, replacing Marcosius, adding that he himself is also a candidate. Zagan asks who will ultimately be chosen, and Barbatos replies that the other 12 will deliberate and decide together. At the same time, two of the candidates are seen speaking to each other while pointing at Barbatos, stating that he is on the list of candidates for the position of Demon Lord. Suddenly, the voice of the auction master echoes through the hall, announcing the rarest item to be sold, a girl of the elf race with naturally white, undyed hair. He explains that she was originally meant to become a follower of King Narcosius, but after his death, it was decided that she would be sold at auction. The moment Zagan sees her, he is deeply captivated. The auction begins at 10,000, and without hesitation, Zagan declares his bid, 1 million. Everyone in the hall is stunned, and the auction ends in the first round with Zagan as the winner. He steps forward to stand before the girl, yet finds himself unable to say a word. The girl keeps her gaze lowered, her expression rigid, and Zagan notices a collar around her neck that suppresses her mana to prevent her from escaping. Zagan asks the auction master whether she is conscious, and he reassures him that she is in her normal state, possessing extraordinary abilities, and that no spell has affected her. Suddenly, Zagan says in a cold voice that he wants to hear the screams of agony that will come from her, causing the auction master and everyone around him to recoil in terror. Afterward, Zagan takes her to his castle and sits upon his throne while she stands before him, still unsure of what to say. The girl breaks the silence and asks if she may ask a question. Zagan is surprised that she speaks, is struck by her voice, and allows her to continue. Calmly, she asks him how exactly he plans to kill her, so that she can prepare herself. Zagan is shocked. He rises from his seat and tells her that he will not kill her, and that he needs her alive. The girl looks around at the instruments of torture, then asks anxiously whether she should expect something worse than death. Zagan grows even more flustered, because all of those tools had belonged to the former lord of the castle, and he had been too lazy to remove them. He calms himself, then introduces himself to her first, and assures her that he has no interest in torture. He tries to ask for her name, but struggles to get a clear answer, until she speaks up on her own, and says that her name is Neflia. He finds the name appealing and asks about her family name. She replies that she does not have a family name, but that he may call her Nefi instead. He asks whether lacking a family name is common among the elves, and she answers that it is not, explaining that she herself is a cursed child. She then asks whether he intends to conduct experiments on her. He denies it, hesitating to confess that he bought her because he fell in love with her. He quickly changes the subject and tells her to choose whichever room she wants for now. She asks coldly whether that will be the room where she dies. He snaps back irritably, insisting that he already told her he would not kill her. She is puzzled by his insistence, and he realizes that she must have lived a harsh childhood, having been captured, sold as a slave, and told that she would most likely become a test subject. Zagan reflects to himself that he does not know the full story of the cursed child, but it seems she does not wish to talk about it, just as he once did. He himself had no family name, did not even remember his parents, and the only thing he recalls is living among garbage while people called him Zagan. He then tells her that he bought her because he needs her, and asks her not to speak about death again. After that, he takes her to see the rooms so she can choose one. As they ascend the stairs, Nefi suddenly slips, and he catches her by the hand before she falls. He opens the door to one of the rooms and finds a guillotine inside, immediately shutting the door. Nefi bows her head and says that he may take her head whenever he wishes. He explains that it is all a misunderstanding, and that it was a trap left behind by the former castle guards. He opens the door again, casts a spell, and completely destroys the guillotine. Nefi enters the room and notices the moon from the balcony, becoming utterly captivated by its sight. She asks Zagan whether it would be acceptable for her to take this room. He asks if she is truly satisfied with the place, and she answers that she is, because it is the room he prepared for her himself. The next day, Zagan wakes up to find Nefi sleeping beside him on the floor, since her room was not yet ready for her to sleep in. Feeling hungry, he goes to fetch food. Nefi wakes up and sees him enter carrying the meal, greeting him with a soft, "Good morning," but he finds himself unable to respond. When they sit down to eat, Nefi is surprised that Zagan eats the same food as she does. She says that it is good he brought food, but strange that he eats it as well. Zagan is stunned by how simple the meal is, and she explains that this is the kind of food given to slaves like her. Zagan is shocked even more, because it is the very same food he grew up eating when he was alone, as it was the only thing available to him. He begins to wonder what ordinary people even eat. Nefi then offers to cook for him herself. He is taken aback and asks whether she knows how to cook. She confirms that she does, and he finds himself even more drawn to her. He decides to take her out to buy the necessary ingredients. On their way, they encounter a merchant who offers to give them a ride in exchange for 3 bronze coins. Zagan recalls that he spent all of his wealth buying Nefi, and no longer has any money, so he decides that walking is better. As they walk, he thinks of ways to earn money, such as selling the torture devices in the castle, but realizes no one would buy them, or beating the merchant and stealing his cart, which he rejects because he does not want Nefi to see him as a bad person. For a moment, he even imagines selling the castle and opening a restaurant with her. Suddenly, they hear the merchant screaming and see a group of bandits attacking him. Zagan feels a chill when he notices the fear on Nefi's face and realizes that this scene mirrors the way she was abducted in the past. At that moment, he decides to become a hero in her eyes and save the merchant. He calls down lightning upon the bandits, killing most of them. The survivors are shocked that a sorcerer would come to rescue someone, since sorcerers are usually the ones who commit such evil acts. They charge at him together, and Zagan decides to display his power before Nefi. Striking down one of the bandits with a crushing blow from his fist, Zagan easily grabs the axe of one of the bandits, snaps it with a single finger, then strikes him hard in the face, causing him to bleed profusely. The bandits immediately call for their affiliated sorcerer, and when he arrives, he is utterly astonished, wondering how a sorcerer could be doing something good. Zagan asks whether they hired him, and the man responds with a threat, saying that Zagan does not know who he is but will regret ever meeting him. The sorcerer draws a magic circle of fire on the ground, while Zagan stands completely indifferent, showing no fear at all. With a single motion, Zagan extinguishes the flames. The enemy remarks that it was a nice move, but too late, and attempts to activate the magic circle again, only to be shocked when it no longer functions. Zagan then tells him that he has taken control of the circle and that it now belongs to him, before using it to completely annihilate the sorcerer. The bandits are terrified by Zagan's power and flee in panic. Zagan turns to Nefi and sees fear on her face, causing him to grow tense and feel that he has done something wrong. He reassures her, telling her not to worry, as those thieves are not dangerous at all. The people laugh at that remark and thank Zagan for saving them, and the merchant offers to take them to their destination for free and give him a reward. Zagan thanks him and accepts, thinking to himself that this is a good way to earn money, although the reputation of sorcerers is terrible to begin with. Upon arriving in the city, Zagan thinks about what he should buy for Nefi, expecting that she will say she is satisfied with anything. He decides to take her to a clothing shop to buy her new clothes. Nefi is overjoyed, and before they leave, the shop owner whispers in her ear that it is wonderful to have someone who cares about her this much. Afterwards, Zagan takes her to the blacksmith and asks whether he knows a way to remove the collar from her neck. Nefi is surprised by Zagan's desire to remove it, and the blacksmith explains that the collar was made with a special spell and is likely trapped as well, meaning that breaking it by force could sever her neck, though there must be another way to safely remove it. Zagan recalls that the auction master said they did not know how to remove the collar, and since they took Nefi from the palace of the demon lord, they must not have taken the collar's key from there. Zagan reminds the blacksmith of this and offers him payment, but the blacksmith refuses, saying he will not take any money, as this is repayment for Zagan saving him and his daughter from bandits a year ago. Zagan thinks it was merely a coincidence, since he had not intended to save the blacksmith and was simply killing people as usual without any clear reason. After they leave, Zagan feels uncomfortable because of how many people he helped that day, as he is not accustomed to such things, being a sorcerer. On the other hand, the blacksmith is surprised that Zagan's appearance has changed and that he no longer seems as terrifying as before. Zagan and Nefi go to the market and buy what they originally came for, and as sunset approaches, they enter a restaurant and eat together. Nefi asks whether he truly intends to remove the collar from her neck, and he answers yes. She then asks whether he is not afraid that she might run away if the collar is removed. Zagan thinks to himself that this possibility has indeed been on his mind and that she has no real reason to stay with him, but he concludes that it does not matter, as removing the collar is what matters most. He tells her that he still does not know how to remove it and does not want to give her false hope. He scolds himself for the way he spoke, realizing he said the opposite of what he meant, and thinks that he should find a magic book that teaches him how to talk to girls. He notices Nefi staring at the food in confusion and asks whether something is wrong. She says no, then recalls her childhood when she lived with her family before becoming a slave, and admits that she has never eaten food like this before. At that moment, Zagan finally understands why he was drawn to her, because she resembles him and has gone through the same hardships he endured. He tells her that anything she wants is fine, and that this food is far better than what they ate in the morning. Nefi tries to use the fork but fails, remembers the spoon and uses it instead, and ends up loving the food. Zagan then tries to use the fork himself and also fails, becoming deeply embarrassed. Nefi laughs, which makes him even more embarrassed, so he begins eating as well. People watch them and laugh at their adorable, causing both of them to feel shy and leave the place. Elsewhere, the girl who previously witnessed Zagan blowing apart the knight's head appears once more, this time walking while wearing a knight's armor. We learn that her name is Shastile, and she is heading toward the castle. She recalls that she had been in a battle against evil sorcerers, and when she was returning with the knights, they were suddenly ambushed. Forced to flee, she ran until she reached the forest, where Zagan appeared at that moment and saved her. Lord Clover enters and greets her as the returning heroine, but she answers bitterly that a heroine does not return safely while leaving 4 knights dead behind. He tells her that it was not her fault, reminds her that she vowed to avenge them, and urges her to be proud of herself. He then adds that, after eliminating the sorcerers in their hideout, they discovered the one responsible for all the abduction cases, a sorcerer named Zagan. Shastile is shocked and declares that it is impossible, but he responds that sorcerers are evil by nature, and even if Zagan had no direct involvement in the kidnappings, he is still one of them, and must be restrained. Shastile requests to personally take charge of the mission to search for him, and he agrees. The next day, Zagan wakes up to find Nefi standing before him, waiting and informing him that breakfast is ready. This time, he is the one who greets her first. They enter the dining hall and find it immaculately clean and beautifully arranged, unlike what he was used to. He notices that Nefi has prepared a large amount of food and asks whether she went out to buy bread. She replies that she baked it herself, which makes him admire her even more. Afterward, he goes to his library, and Nefi follows him inside, asking what he is reading. He answers that it is obviously about sorcery. She says that she had thought so, but was not sure whether those drawings were related to sorcery. He asks whether sorcery among the elves uses different symbols, but she replies that she knows nothing about sorcery at all. Zagan is surprised by this, despite her possessing an enormous amount of mana, and begins explaining the fundamentals of sorcery to her. He draws a simple magic circle in front of her, and explains that it produces lightning when mana is infused into it. When he demonstrates it, she is deeply impressed. He tells her that this is the lowest level of sorcery, then starts adding more symbols to the circle to gain greater control over the lightning. He infuses mana again, and this time the lightning becomes stronger and denser. He then explains that the problem with this circle is that anyone can use it if they pour their mana into it, so a restriction must be added to ensure that only the one who created it can activate it. Nefi notices that he added the symbols only outside the circle and asks whether they can be placed inside it. He praises her observation and explains that the answer is both yes and no, because placing symbols inside the circle can cause mana interference, preventing the spell from functioning. However, someone with perfect control over their mana could make it work. She asks if that means sorcery dependent on a single individual is possible. He confirms it and adds that if such a person existed, they would become the strongest person in the world, but that this remains purely theoretical and no one has ever attempted it because it is nearly impossible. Neffy says she understands the basics of sorcery, but wonders whether anyone can learn it. Zagan thinks that she has considerable talent and replies that it depends on knowledge. The more knowledge one has, the stronger one becomes. That is why sorcerers create traps and tricks to prevent knowledge from being stolen. He warns her not to touch any book in the library. She becomes frightened of the books around her, but he reassures her that he was joking and that he has modified all the traps, so they will not activate. Neffy relaxes and is happy that Zagan has spoken with her for so long. He explains that he talked so much because sorcery is what he knows best. She then asks him what he intends to do with all that power. Zagan falls silent for a moment and answers that he has never thought about it before, but believes he learned all of this simply to save himself. He tells her that when he was young, he had no money and nowhere to live, so he was forced to steal. Even so, he was better off than many others because he survived. One day, someone imprisoned him because children were suitable for experiments, but he managed to escape. From that moment on, he realized that he had to become stronger in order to live. Neffy lowers her gaze sadly and says that she was never able to become strong. Zagan tells her that if she is interested in sorcery, he can teach her. Suddenly, he senses someone entering the range of the barrier surrounding the castle, and it turns out to be Shastile and her knights. He tells Neffy to prepare dinner with Maggie, then steps outside to meet them. On the other side, Shastile shatters Zagan's barrier with her sword and enters. Zagan appears before them and looks at the sword in Shastile's hand, immediately realizing that it is one of the 12 legendary swords, said to have slain the Demon King. He then looks at her and remembers that she was the girl he saved from the knight, who lost consciousness after witnessing him blow the knight's head apart. He thinks to himself that had he known she was a knight, he would never have let her go. Zagan attacks first with lightning, but one of the knights leaps in front of Shastile and blocks it with his shield. Zagan notices that their armor is of high quality. The knight charges at him in anger, but Zagan meets him head-on with his fist, shattering his armor and sending him flying. He asks them whether they intend to leave now, or if they will let this girl face him alone. Another knight attacks, and Zagan snaps his sword with a finger, strikes him on the head, and knocks him to the ground, placing his foot on him. He addresses Shastile, saying that if he were in her place, he would not attack, because he could crush the knight's head beneath his foot right now. Shastile then drives her sword into the ground, and demands to know why he is torturing them, and whether he seeks vengeance after losing. Zagan replies that if he killed them all, the Order would treat it as nothing more than 4 ordinary deaths, but if he tortured them and let them go, the news would spread and everyone would fear him. He presses his foot down harder on the knight, and Shastile becomes enraged, but suddenly she told him that he was lying. He wondered in shock how she had realized it. There was one thing he was honest about. He did not want to kill them, so that Neffy would not see the corpses in this place. At that moment, Shastile pulled her sword from the ground and decided to finish Zagan. He created a shield formed by a magical circle, but she shattered it with her blade, so he chose to evade her strikes rather than confront her directly. Shastile felt that he was mocking her and deliberately refusing to attack, and he told her that he could not strike women. This infuriated her, and she sharply asked how someone like him could stain his hands with sorcery. He asked in return whether using sorcery was a crime, and she answered that it was evil and used to harm people. He then asked her whether the power she wielded did not kill sorcerers weaker than herself. She attacked him immediately, and he placed his foot on her sword, saying that he was not trying to justify anything, but that a great number of people needed sorcery simply to survive, and if they were hunted down and killed for money, then no one had the right to speak of justice. Shastile hesitated for a moment, then pulled her sword from beneath his foot and pierced his magical circle. Zagan seized the blade with both hands, lifted her with force, and hurled her into a tree. He noticed that his hand had been burned and that his healing had become slow because of her sword, and he decided to kill her. Seeing no other solution, suddenly she whispered to him, telling him to pretend that he was dead. He was taken aback, and she explained that the church would never stop pursuing him until he died, and that even if he defeated her, they would send knights stronger than she was to hunt him down. She told him to feign death and then live his life as a normal human. He said that he could not believe he was hearing such words from a knight, and she replied that he had not killed her men, and had spoken about spreading fear. Yet she had seen mercy in his eyes. He was stunned by the word mercy, for he knew himself to be an evil person. She continued, saying that she had not forgotten that he had saved her. Zagan thought that what she was doing was forbidden and could put her life in danger, and he rejected the idea in his heart, because if Neffy fled, she would be attacked. Suddenly Neffy came out of the castle, and Shastile's followers saw her. One of them hurled his spear at her. Zagan rushed toward her and blocked the spear with his hand, and it pierced straight through. Neffy became furious and raised her hand, and plants burst forth from the ground, binding all the soldiers. Zagan grabbed her quickly and told her to stop, and she came back to her senses. That night, Neffy treated Zagan's injured hand. He remembered Shastile's apology before she left with her soldiers. He then asked Nefi whether she had not said that she could not use sorcery, and she told him that what she had done was not sorcery. He said that it did not matter, that she was what mattered most to him, no matter what her power was. He asked her if she had been afraid, and she was surprised and asked him in astonishment whether he saw her as frightening. He answered that he did not, explaining that he had simply been curious because he had never seen such power before. She told him that this power was magic. Zagan was astonished to discover that magic truly existed, and that it was not a logical technique like sorcery, but a supernatural force that allowed a person to wield tremendous abilities simply by wishing. He asked her whether all elves used magic, and she replied that they did not, and that she alone did, because she was a cursed child. She recalled how people used to call her frightening and forbade their children from playing with her, and she told him that such a power should not exist, nor should anyone be born with white hair. Zagan noticed in her eyes the look of someone who had been told that she was not human and had no right to possess emotions or desires. Nefi continued, saying that one day her village was attacked, and the villagers asked her to use her power to protect them in exchange for letting her live. At that moment, she felt something inside her break. When she was captured and the others fled, only a few survived, while the rest became corpses. When she saw them, she felt that they deserved what had happened, and she laughed at them. Zagan understood why she had stopped expressing her emotions. She apologized, saying that he must be feeling disappointed now. He asked her why he would feel that way, and added that, if he had been in her place, he would have killed the entire village along with the attackers. She was shocked by his words, and said that she did not think they would forgive her for what she had done. He replied that they were dead, that their opinion did not matter, and that she should live and become stronger. She asked him whether it was acceptable to become stronger, and he asked her in return whether possessing power was wrong and whether the desire for power was evil. When she did not answer, he told her that someone who had once been saved by him from a band of thieves had told him that power was evil, and he remembered telling that girl that her defeat had been only natural because she was weak. She replied that the weak had no right to live, and asked whether power alone could truly make a person great. At that moment, Zagan told Nefi that he felt she had lived a normal childhood, that pity and compassion were luxuries that made people careless, and that the comfortable life she had lived had made her weak, while he had refused to accept that and had lived striving to become stronger. He stepped closer to her and said that he had already told her he needed her. She asked him hesitantly whether she was truly allowed to stay here, and he confirmed it, especially after the meal she had prepared for him, saying that he could no longer imagine his life without her. Nefi then burst into tears. That night, Zagan asked Nefi whether she wanted to learn sorcery, and based on what he had seen that day, he told her that she did not have full control over her magic. She answered by asking whether he thought she could learn it, and he replied with surprise, explaining that the power she had used was enormous, even though the collar around her neck was meant to suppress the flow of mana, and that he was still not certain whether learning sorcery would help her control her magic, but at the very least, it would allow her to defend herself. She agreed with great enthusiasm because she wanted to be useful to Zagan and protect him. After that, she spoke about the story he had told earlier, saying that she felt his power had made him unable to understand what it felt like to be weak, and although he had said that everything was meaningless, she sensed that it had been painful for him. He asked her in surprise why she felt that way, and she replied that she did not know, but when he was speaking, she felt a deep sadness within him. Suddenly, she told him that he was not a bad person, and that although he might not speak much, she would never forget that he had treated her with kindness. Zagan's eyes filled with tears at her words. The next day, Barbados arrived in a state of anger after hearing about Zagan's battle with the knights without being informed, and told him that even the sword maiden, Chastel, had failed to defeat him. Zagan replied that she had indeed been very strong and had managed to destroy the barriers surrounding the castle. Nefi entered carrying tea, and Barbados was shocked that Zagan had not conducted any experiments on her yet, asking whether he had kept her alive to serve him. Zagan denied this, explaining that Nefi was not a servant, but that he would train her to assist him in battle. Barbados then said that he understood the reason for the chaos in the castle courtyard, and asked whether Zagan intended to become one of the demon lords. Zagan answered that all he wanted was the key to Nefi's collar, but added that if he also possessed authority, no one would dare lay a hand on her. He then thought to himself that he was still not strong enough to claim that position, as there were those far stronger than him who had trained for hundreds of years. After Barbados left, Zagan wondered why he had come in the first place. Nefi asked him in surprise whether he was not his friend, and Zagan replied that choosing friends required caution. She said in astonishment that he had seemed very happy while Barbados was there. After that, they went out to repair the barriers destroyed by the knights, and Zagan began teaching Nefi sorcery, giving her the experience he had accumulated over 10 years. Days passed, and he prepared her until she was able to rely on herself and become strong. After a month, a strange bird suddenly appeared carrying a message for Zagan, and he was shocked to discover that it was from the 12 demon lords. He went to meet them in the ruins beneath the city, which they used as their hideout. The moment he entered, he felt an immense pressure from their mana, so he spoke to them in a proud tone so that they would not look down on him. They told him that they had chosen him to become the 13th Demon Lord in place of Marcosius, drew the crest of the Demon Lord, and told him that to take the position he had to accept that crest. Zagan felt an enormous amount of mana emanating from the crest, and the same from each of them. He told them that it made no sense, as there were sorcerers far stronger than him. They replied that his words were reasonable, that he had not yet reached sufficient power, yet despite that, there was no sorcerer capable of killing him. They said that the first sorcerer he had killed, Andras the Cursed, had been a powerful individual, and that what was astonishing was that Zagan had been able to replicate his power with a single glance, and not only that, but had understood his sorcery with incredible speed, allowing him to create a truly unique form of sorcery. Zagan recalled the sorcerer who had been imprisoned when he was a child, and thought to himself that they had uncovered his secret weapon. They continued, saying that they admired his sorcery and his talent, that they knew no one could stop him, and that if he wished to take something from anyone, he would take it, for his power truly befitted a ruler, and in time he would become the greatest sorcerer in history. Zagan replied that if their words were true, then that meant he could take all of their sorceries. They all laughed mockingly, and one of them, the only one wearing a white robe, replied that his words were correct, but he should know that they were capable of taking far more from him than he could ever take from them. At that moment, Zagan remembered Nephi and realized that she was their true target. They told him that the wrath of a demon lord was no simple thing, but the erasure of everything in one's life, whether human, matter, or memory, meaning the complete annihilation of existence itself. They added that this was the nature of the beings he was now facing, and of the one he would become, and that he would never see peace again, passing from the darkness of sorcery into a far greater darkness. This was the world that awaited him. He told himself that he had known all of this from the very first moment he decided to become a sorcerer. He had understood that the next step could only be one of two things. Either one of the demon lords would die and be forgotten, or he himself would fall into oblivion. Yet he could not drag Nephi into that darkness. Thus, he told them that he agreed to become a demon lord, but on one condition, and they accepted. At sunset, Zagan returned to his home, where Nephi told him that she had finished preparing dinner. He calmly informed her that he had become one of the demon lords, and she congratulated him. He continued by saying that now that he was a demon lord, he also possessed their holdings. He took out the key to her collar and unlocked it, then suddenly told her that he no longer needed her and ordered her to leave. A short while later, Nephi was sitting in the street in complete shock, unable to comprehend what had happened. She even wondered why she was there at all, as only moments earlier she had been cooking dinner for Zagan. She stood up to return to the castle, but when she saw the collar in her hand, she remembered that he was the one who had cast her out. She recalled his words when he said that he needed her, and she collapsed to her knees under the weight of her emotions. At that moment, Chastel approached and asked whether she was all right. Nephi stood up and asked if she had come to kill her. Chastel was startled by her strange smile and her readiness to die, and replied that she had not come to harm her. Nephi insisted that she kill her. When the people saw them, they assumed that Chastel was harassing Nephi, and they grew angry with her. Maniola, the owner of the clothing shop, intervened and stood in front of Chastel, who tried to explain to her and to the crowd that she had not come to hurt or kill Nephi. Nephi then reassured them that Chastel had done nothing to her, causing Chastel to break down in tears because of the suspicion cast upon her. After that, they all went to a restaurant, where Maniola asked Chastel whether she had bullied Nephi. Nephi answered in the negative, firmly stating that she had done nothing. When the food was served and Nephi tasted it, she remembered that she had been cooking dinner before Zagan expelled her. Tears streamed down her face, and everyone grew deeply concerned. She told them that Zagan had driven her out of the house. Chastel said that she had thought him a respectable man, but that he now seemed to have exploited her. Nephi defended him, insisting that Zagan was not the kind of person who would do such a thing. Maniola asked whether anything strange had happened before he expelled her, and Nephi replied that Zagan had come and told her that he had become a demon lord. Maniola explained that the demon lords were the most powerful sorcerers, and that the city they lived in had once been ruled by one of them, named Marcosius, during which time the people had lived in peace. Since his death, however, terrible things had begun to occur. Chastel added that among those events was the abduction of girls by sorcerers for experimentation. Maniola replied that the guards had captured the one responsible for that, and she believed that the mastermind was someone known as the Face Stealer. Chastel then recalled Clavel's words when he had told her that Zagan was responsible for the abductions. Nephi asked Maniola why the people held such a negative view of the castle knights, and she answered that they had demanded an enormous sum of money in exchange for saving them. Chastel felt guilty, But Nefi said that Chastel was not to blame, as she had not been the one who demanded the money. Chastel was overjoyed that Nefi defended her and did not see her as guilty. Chastel then said that the most important matter now was dealing with the demon lords, but the problem was that there were 13 demon lords while they possessed only 12 great swords. Their usual solution was to eliminate the newly appointed 13th demon lord before he could grow strong and become a real threat, especially since other sorcerers would also target him in hopes of promotion. At that moment, Nefi understood that Zagan had distanced himself from her to protect her from the war that would be waged against him. Chastel suddenly asked whether she thought Zagan was capable of gathering sorcerers who kidnapped people and conducted experiments on them. Nefi answered no, explaining that he did not care about the weak, and that even when he saved some merchants from bandits, he said he did it only because they were a nuisance. As she spoke, Nefi realized that he might have been doing all of that for her sake. Chastel agreed and added that even during their battle he had gone easy on her because she was a woman, and that she had noticed something strange about him, sensing that he needed help and compassion but refused to show it. Nefi was startled to learn that she was not the only one who had noticed what she herself had suspected. Once she was certain of it, Nefi felt an overwhelming desire to return to Zagan, to help him and stand by his side. Chastel grasped her sword and Nefi thought she was going to fight Zagan, but Chastel said that Timoshaz was finished and was committing crimes in his name, and that she had to eliminate him. Maniola told Nefi that if anything happened to her, or if she had any trouble, she should come to her. Nefi asked why she treated her so kindly, and Maniola replied in surprise that it was because she was her friend. Nefi was astonished and said that she had never had friends before. Maniola and Chastel were delighted, and Nefi said that she wanted to be their friend as well. Maniola teased her, asking whether it was acceptable for a knight to befriend a sorcerer's assistant, then laughed and said that they were already friends. Suddenly, Chastel's followers, the knights, burst in. When they saw Nefi, they were terrified because of what she had done to them the last time. At that moment, a black aura surrounded them. An attack was launched, and Nefi and Chastel were abducted. A voice declared that it was Zagan, and that if they wanted the two girls back, they should come to his castle on the other side. At the same time, Zagan was in the forest, holding captive some of the knights who had fallen into the trap he had set with Nefi. He thought of Nefi and told himself that she would live a calm and happy life among beings who loved her, far from anxiety, sorcerers, and the castle. Before he left, one of the knights grabbed his leg and begged him, saying that he did not care what Zagan would do to them, but he pleaded with him not to harm Commander Chastel, as she was the only one who had defended him and believed in his innocence, even offering herself to confront the lord of the castle for his sake. Suddenly, Maniola appeared before Zagan and told him that Nefi and Chastel had been kidnapped. Zagan was stunned and realized that he had waited far too long to distance her from him. Yet he feared going to rescue her lest their connection be revealed and she be targeted. Maniola interrupted his thoughts and asked why he was hesitating, telling him that Nefi had been trying to return to him and wanted to stay by his side and support him. Zagan felt that her words and her light blows against his body were more painful than any attack he had ever endured, and he resolved to save the person he cared about more than anyone else. Maniola decided to go with him to rescue her friends, and the knights clung to him, begging him to take them along. Maniola asked whether he even knew where they were going, and he answered that he knew exactly who was behind everything that had happened. At the same time, Nefi awoke to find herself bound, with Chastel beside her. Nefi noticed that the shackles blocked the flow of mana, just like the collar that had once been around her neck. Yet, unlike it, they could be removed easily without any special key. Suddenly, Barbados entered the room. Nefi told him that she had thought he was Zagan's friend, and he laughed, saying that he had never expected to hear such a word used for sorcerers. He then asked her if she had ever heard of someone called Andras the Cursed, explaining that he was the first sorcerer Zagan had killed, and that by coincidence, Barbados himself had been his disciple. Nefi trembled, but Barbados reassured her, saying that no sorcerer truly cared about avenging his master, and that he himself would have killed Andras if Zagan had not done it first. He went on to say that the castle Andras lived in, all the money spent on it, and even the books Zagan read were things that should have belonged to him. With bitter sarcasm, he asked whether she could really blame him for not standing aside and letting Zagan take everything without resistance. He then openly admitted that he was the one who incited the castle knights against Zagan, but that his foolish followers had left too many traces, and that those he sent to confront Zagan directly had all been defeated. Chastel asked him in shock whether he was the one who had kidnapped the girls. He replied mockingly, asking if she had only just realized it. Chastel grew furious, and Barbados explained that the face stealer, who had been pursuing her on the day Zagan saved her, was the originator of the idea. However, they had needed other means to create powerful techniques that would prove to the demon lords that he deserved to become one of them, and the white elf's mana had been intended to open the gate. Nefi replied that what he was doing no longer mattered, because Zagan had already become the 13th demon lord, Barbados was stunned and shouted in rage that Zagan had stolen the castle and the fortune from him, and now had stolen the position he himself had desired. He dragged Neffy violently toward the magic circle he had drawn. Shastel screamed and begged him to take her instead, but he coldly told her not to rush as her turn would come. Neffy struggled desperately, trying to return to Zagan and help him, but before Barbados could unleash his cursed sorcery, Zagan shattered the wall and stormed in, nullifying the spell. Barbados stared in disbelief and asked when Zagan had realized that everything had been his doing. Zagan replied that he had begun to suspect it from the moment the face stealer appeared. He had never believed that someone who once begged him to be spared could break through the barriers around his castle, and the only person that came to mind was Barbados, the one most accustomed to breaching his security system, capable of using dimensions, moving anywhere, and summoning anything. On the very day the face stealer appeared, Barbados had visited him as if to see the outcome, and Zagan said he would have been insane not to suspect him. Zagan attacked in an instant, slashing Barbados's hands and knee, then rushed to Neffy, freeing her from her restraints and asking if she was hurt. She burst into tears, saying that he was the one who looked to be in pain, that she did not know what had happened to him, and that perhaps she should accept his words when he said he no longer needed her, yet she knew he could not be fine. Zagan blamed himself for leaving her alone, and his fury toward Barbados flared as Barbados began drawing a summoning circle. Zagan reassured Neffy that nothing would happen, and indeed the circle shattered, and every time Barbados tried to draw another, it failed to activate. Neffy asked in astonishment what was happening. Zagan reminded her of the theoretical explanation he had once given about absolute sorcery, the act of placing magic circles within other magic circles to cancel sorcery. He then admitted that there was a small trick that made it possible, drawing the exact same magic circle inside itself, causing the two circles to negate each other. Barbados, shocked, asked whether this ability was inherited from Andras. Zagan replied that if Andras had been capable of such a thing, he would not have died. He explained that he had been 8 years old when he first used sorcery, and that when Andras imprisoned him, he had drawn a magic circle in front of him. Zagan memorized its shape and traced it onto his own hand without Andras noticing, although a mere amateur should not have been able to replicate sorcery simply by copying its form. When Zagan was later captured while trying to escape and was on the verge of death, he activated the circle at the exact same moment Andras released his, causing it to strike Andras and kill him. Barbados's anger intensified, and he created an enormous number of magic circles around himself, but Zagan destroyed them all. Barbados cried out in disbelief, asking how Zagan could draw spells he had never seen before and shatter his circles in an instant. Zagan answered that if this was truly his strength, even an amateur could break his circles with proper timing. He told him that there was still plenty of time to improve his skills if he truly wished to be a sorcerer. Zagan said that when he himself had been weak, he had locked himself away among books, refining his sorcery, never going out or speaking to anyone, and no one had ever come looking for him, while Barbados had constantly appeared before him, indifferent to his discomfort. Barbados replied that he could have killed Zagan at any moment, but had simply been curious to see what a runaway child like him was doing. Zagan then showed him what he had been doing. He created a massive magic circle of a completely different form, and took control of the circles Barbados had drawn on the ground, turning them into sources that amplified his own power. Barbados asked if he had devoured his sorcery. Zagan liked the expression and replied that the demon lords had given him a new title, Sorcerer Slayer. He prepared to deliver a killing blow, and Barbados realized that he could never stand against Zagan, even if he himself became a demon lord. He begged him to stop, offering everything he wanted and claiming that they were friends. Zagan approached him coldly and asked whether sorcerers even had friends, then smashed his fist into the ground with all his strength, deliberately missing him. Zagan suddenly laughed and said he was joking, adding that if he truly wanted to kill him, he would do it. But then who would bring him the juice that Barbados always did? Barbados flew into a rage at the condescension and vowed to kill him if he were spared. Zagan replied indifferently that it did not matter, as long as the drinks were on him every time Zagan won a fight. Barbados asked in disbelief what there was to gain by letting an enemy live. Zagan answered that he found the custom sorcerers clung to ridiculous, that he would do as he pleased, and that Barbados would have to become stronger if he wanted to change his mind. Suddenly, the magic circle on the ground activated. Zagan told Barbados that it was pointless, but Barbados replied that he had not done it. Zagan realized that his strike against the ground might have activated the circle unintentionally. He shouted for everyone to run and leapt out of the circle as an enormous wave of mana erupted. He then turned sharply to Barbados and asked, "What were you planning to do here?" Vibird had intended to summon a true demon. Demons were beings said to have existed in ancient ages, and there was no concrete proof of their existence in the present era, yet certain theories claimed that the symbols used in sorcery had been passed down to humans from demons themselves. Because no sacrifice was offered, the summoning was incomplete, and the mana manifested only as a shadow. Even so, Zagan felt an overwhelming pressure, far greater than what he had once felt before the 12 demon lords. Suddenly, the demon's shadow bowed before him and said, "Give me your command." At that moment, Zagan realized the cause was the Demon Lord crest engraved on his hand. He looked at it and saw it glowing. He ordered the demon to leave at once, declaring that this place did not belong to it. The shadow returned to where it had come from. The magic circle on the ground vanished, yet the surroundings began to collapse, so Zagan gathered everyone and escaped with them. Outside, they encountered Shastiel's followers, who took her with them and departed. Manuela thanked Zagan for saving her and bade them farewell. After that, Barbados made an agreement with Zagan, promising to bring him the juice he liked in exchange for being left alone. In the end, only Zagan and Nefi remained. Both felt awkward. Nefi told him that she wished to stay by his side, and Zagan noticed that she had grown stronger than before. Suddenly, he knelt before her and asked her to call him by his name instead of master, making it clear that she was neither a slave nor a servant nor a mere possession. Unable to confess his love, he simply said that they would stay together forever, until one of them died. Nefi was overjoyed and agreed. Then she took out the slave collar and asked whether he could place it around her neck once more. Zagan was shocked, but she explained that she wanted to keep it as a reminder of their first meeting, and as proof that he was the reason she was by his side. Zagan agreed and placed the collar around her neck with his own hands. She then asked him what she was to him now. In his heart, Zagan wondered how he was supposed to learn how to love his bride. The next day, people began talking about the appointment of a new demon lord, describing him as an extremely frightening individual. At the same time, Kimaris and Grimoire were sitting at the same table, listening to these rumors. Kimaris asked whether she was not upset, saying he had thought she would be the one to become the demon lord. She replied that she was not upset at all and merely asked him to observe, adding that everything in this city was about to change. Outside the restaurant, others were speaking about Zagan, wondering whether he would rule the city in place of Marcosius. They mentioned that they had seen him personally shopping at the market despite his high status, and they also spoke of Nefi, praising her extraordinary beauty. Elsewhere in the Knight's Fortress, Clavel asked Shastiel why she refused to carry out the mission to eliminate the 13th Demon Lord. She answered that she could not do it because she could not forget that he had saved her life twice, and she could not betray him. She added, as she had said before, that Zagan was not responsible for the abductions that had taken place. Enraged by her defense of a sorcerer, Clavel stripped her of her knighthood. Shastiel thought to herself that the fortress had become more concerned with assigning blame than with confronting the demon lords, and that it had turned into a truly corrupt place. Her followers tried to defend her before the lord of the fortress, but she silenced them so they would not share her fate and be expelled as well. She then handed over her great sword to Clavel. She remembered how proud she had been when she first received that sword, and how she had used its power to protect people, only to realize that she had come to follow the fortress's orders alone, no longer wielding the sword by her own will. Strangely, Clavel told her not to be distressed, explaining that he was not pleased to issue such an order, that it would take time, but that her punishment would eventually be revoked. He explained that swords choose their bearers and cannot easily be taken from those who have been chosen, and he promised to look for a solution. Shastiel felt relieved that someone still recognized her worth within the fortress, but he warned her that all he could do was protect her politically, and that a terrifying man was coming to the fortress, the most dangerous bearer of a great sword, Raphael Hayurandal. Shastiel trembled upon hearing his name, having heard rumors of his cruelty, and the first thing that crossed her mind was that he was coming because of her. As the sun set, she left the place. Meanwhile, Zagan was in the palace study, reading the books he had taken from the Marcosius base, hoping to find any proof of the existence of demons or any information about them. Nefi entered, trying to sneak up and surprise him. He noticed her and allowed her to continue, but she eventually made a sound and gave herself away. He asked why she was trying to surprise him, and she replied that he looked exhausted from all his research. Zagan realized how kind she was and how much she wanted to ease his burden. She then told him that lunch was ready, took him by the hand, and they went to eat together. He was astonished by the number of dishes she had prepared especially for him, which she had learned from Manuela. When it came time for dessert, he enjoyed it greatly. Suddenly, he sensed something breaching the barrier, yet he remained seated and continued eating his dessert. The intruder entered the room, and Zagan remarked that it was only polite to introduce oneself first. He recalled having seen this person before at the auction arena. His name was Forfur the Phantom, and he had been one of the candidates for the position of Demon Lord. Forfur charged a sphere of energy in his hand, prompting Zagan to shout irritably for him to wait until he finished eating. Forfur dispelled the energy sphere and waited. Nefi said she could make another dessert later, but Zagan replied that he would not waste food. Feeling humiliated, Forfur lunged with his claws, but Zagan stopped them with a single hand and noticed that this was not the hand of a sorcerer. Forfur opened his mouth to charge energy again, and Zagan, angered that his meal was about to be ruined, struck him with a powerful blow that rendered him unconscious. They then discovered that Forfur's head was merely a helmet, and inside the armor was a small girl lying unconscious. Zagan was stunned and felt guilty for having struck a child, so he carried her to one of the rooms. When the girl awakened, she panicked and attacked Zagan, but he caught her fist and told her that she owed her life to Nefi, and that he would have thrown her out of the palace if not for her. In his mind, he added that he would never do such a thing in front of Nefi. He asked why she had attacked him, and she answered that she wanted to become strong. He agreed that strength was indeed necessary, but asked why she had chosen him. She replied that he had recently assumed the position of Demon Lord and was known as the Sorcerer Slayer, so she thought she could defeat him if he did not use sorcery. He told her that he could not suppress her abilities because they were not sorcery at all, then asked if she was a dragon. She was shocked that he had discovered her true nature, while he himself was astonished that dragons still existed. He noticed that she reminded him of himself when he was young and had been caught stealing food, so he decided to handle the situation properly. He told her that she had challenged a demon lord, which meant she had to be punished, and ordered her to assist Nefi in the palace for 1 week. Both she and Nefi were surprised, but Zagan thought to himself that he could teach her what was permitted and what was not while she helped Nefi, and that although he knew little about morality, he could at least teach her how to behave. If she made the same mistake again, he would no longer feel guilty. Suddenly, Forfer asked whether he was not going to eat her. Zagan was shocked and thought to himself that even though he was a bad person, words like that still hurt when spoken by a child. Forfer explained that humans believed that eating dragon flesh would make them stronger. Nefi was taken aback by this, and Zagan added that bathing in dragon blood was said to grant immortality, that eating dragon meat supposedly provided endless mana, and that their bones were believed to be used to create elixirs capable of curing any disease. He concluded that these were nothing more than widespread legends, and that was why Forfur had hidden her true identity. Zagan replied to For by firmly assuring her that he would not eat her, because all he would gain from doing so was a foul taste and nothing more. He then asked Nefi to bring her some of the food she had just prepared. For looked at him suspiciously and asked why, so he told her that this was called kindness, and because he was strong and she was weak, he was giving her food. For became angry and nearly threw the plate in his face, but he fixed her with a terrifying stare and said that he hated people who wasted food, especially if it was food made by Nefi, and that he killed those who did so. For was frightened and began to eat, and she found the food so delicious that she started devouring it quickly. After that, Zagan headed toward the door and told her to help Nefi with whatever she needed. For asked whether he was not afraid that she might attack Nefi after he left. He replied that she could do whatever she wanted because he was certain she knew what would happen to her if she tried to run away, and because he knew her secret. He added, correcting her assumption, that she was mistaken, as Nefi was far stronger than she was. However, the truth was the complete opposite, because Zagan was actually worried and anxious about Nefi, so he stood behind a tree watching them as they hung clothes on the line. Nefi asked for whether she was afraid of Zagan, and For answered that she was not afraid of his appearance, but that his power was extremely terrifying, especially since he had not used any of it when she attacked him. Nefi reassured her, saying that Zagan did not use his power without reason, then asked her what she planned to do next. For replied that she did not know, because she was far too weak to face any of the other demon lords. She then asked Nefi why she obeyed a man like him. Nefi answered that she had come here after Zagan bought her, but he had never treated her as a slave, instead treating her as a person, and that was why she liked being here. She then asked for whether she had a place she belonged to, and For replied that she had nowhere to return to. As the days passed, For began to feel more at ease and learned many things from Nefi, while Zagan failed to find what he was looking for in the books he possessed. He therefore decided to head to Marcosius's castle, as he found it hard to believe that a demon lord like Marcosius would have had no interest in demons. For entered his study and told him that dinner was ready. Zagan stepped out with For following behind him. She asked whether he was not afraid that she might attack him when he turned his back, and he remembered what Barbados had once said to him, "If you let me live, I will kill you." He gave her the same answer, telling her to do it whenever she wished, but that if she lost every time, she would remain in the palace and help Nefi. They all sat down to eat dinner together, and For apologized for interrupting him while he was eating the previous time. Zagan told her that it did not matter. He then said that he was thinking of taking For with him to the Demon Lord's castle. For was shocked and asked if he was insane, because that meant he would be sharing the knowledge of a demon lord with her, and that he had even allowed her into his library, where his most important secrets were kept. She asked whether it had never crossed his mind that she might steal them. He replied that he did not mind at all, because he believed that techniques and knowledge were things meant to be stolen. After all, he himself had killed the former lord of the castle they were living in, and stolen all of his knowledge. She told him that she could grow up quickly, obey him, and serve him, but he answered that it did not matter to him whether she was a dragon, or would remain as she was forever, or whether she used sorcery or not. She was still a child, and it was wrong to force her into anything or hold her accountable. For burst into tears, and Zagan was taken aback, realizing that his words had hurt her. He placed his hand on her head, trying to calm her down, then told her that obeying the demon lord would surely benefit her, and that no sane person would dare target her. For agreed to go with him and asked them to call her Four from now on. The next day, Four began writing her daily diary. She wrote that she and her roommate Nefi cleaned the palace and prepared meals together, that the work was tiring but not unpleasant, and that Nefi often praised her when she did something well. However, she did not understand the relationship between the Demon Lord and Nefi. Nefi would go to him every morning, look at him while he slept for a short while, then begin her work, while the Demon Lord spent most of his time in his study reading books on sorcery and giving Nefi lessons in it. Even so, Four felt a warmth in her chest while living there, and she wrote that tomorrow would be the day he would take her to the former Demon Lord's castle. The following day, they set out toward Marcosius's castle, and along the way, they entered Manuela's shop and bought new clothes for Four. She was extremely happy with the new clothes and thanked Zagan for them. Elsewhere, Chastil was walking while thinking about giving up her great sword and her position for the sake of Zagan and Nefi. She thought to herself that withdrawing from the mission to eliminate Zagan might at least delay it, even though she doubted he would ever thank her for it. Still, she wanted to see them happy, to see them become a family one day and enjoy their lives, and she felt it would be an honor if they remembered her after her death. Suddenly, she found Zagan and Nefi standing before her, with Four beside them. She asked in surprise whether they already had a child. They were shocked and told her that Four was not their daughter. Four asked Zagan who the woman was, and he in turn asked, "That's right, who are you?" Chastil was stunned that he did not recognize her, and Nefi reminded him who she was, realizing that he had forgotten her. He told them that he was used to seeing her in her knight's attire, and that this was the first time he had seen her like this. Her fellow knights entered at that moment, and suddenly Zagan sensed Four's power and saw her transform her hand into a dragon's hand, so he ordered her to stop. She asked why, and he replied that Nefi had many friends around them, and there would be casualties if she used her power. The knights took Chastil away because Clavel wanted her. After they left, Zagan asked for whether they had harmed her, and she replied that a sorcerer did not need a reason to hate knights. He told her that she was right. They then arrived at the underground hall of Marcosius, where Four sensed that a dragon had once lived there. Zagan told her to inform him if she found anything related to the dragon. When they entered, Four discovered a magic circle engraved with dragon motifs. Zagan praised her and asked whether she could activate it. She tried, and it worked. A hidden door opened underground, and they descended to find a massive library filled with books. Four found a book titled The 12 Great Swords. Zagan was shocked and quickly took it from her, finding within it the Demon Lord crest engraved on his hand, and he remembered that he had seen it in this book before. Elsewhere, Raphael Hyrandal entered and confronted Chastil and the other knights. He greeted her, saying that he had heard much about her and had learned that she lost her position due to disobeying orders. He then asked how many sorcerers she had killed throughout her career. She remembered that he was the knight who had killed the most sorcerers of all, and she feared that he would cut off her head if he learned that she had helped Zagan, so she replied that she did not think the number was something worth boasting about. The other knights were shocked by her answer. Raphael laughed and said that it had been a long time since anyone had spoken to him with such boldness. The knight stepped in front of Chastil, trying to protect her before he could kill her. Clavel entered and demanded of Raphael, in sharp reproach, what he was doing to his knights. Raphael replied coldly that he had nothing to do with someone like him. Clavel answered that, regardless of anything else, he was obligated to protect his knights. Raphael then asked about the great sword belonging to that female knight, and where it was now. When Clavel asked why that mattered, Raphael replied that swords choose their bearers, and as long as the one chosen by the sword was still alive, no one else could wield it. For that reason, he claimed that cutting off the girl's head was the solution, adding that Clavel had no right to tell a bearer of a great sword what to do or not to do. Chastil intervened, saying that his words were excessive, and that if they used their swords however they pleased, they would become nothing more than butchers. Raphael grew angry, and said this was the second time she had addressed him in that tone. He drew his sword and placed it before her, then turned to Clavel with mockery, and asked whether he was pleased that one of his knights was about to die while unarmed. Clavel told Chastil to come with him and returned her great sword to her. At that moment, Chastil realized that everything Raphael had done was solely to return her sword. That evening, Zagan was sitting with Barbados in a cafe. Barbados mocked him for taking care of a child, and said he had heard rumors that Zagan had kidnapped a young girl. Zagan replied coolly that if he had come only to say that, it would be better for him to leave. Barbados grabbed him and laughed, saying that he was merely inviting him to the juice he liked, then asked about the identity of the girl with him. Zagan answered that she was someone he knew. Barbados thought for a moment and said, "Forfur?" Zagan was shocked by how quickly he had guessed, but he relaxed when Barbados began talking about Forfur's attack on the palace. Zagan confirmed that she had indeed attacked him and had been driven away. Barbados then said there were rumors claiming she was a dragon, and that if they captured her, they could make a stimulant from her corpse. Zagan thought to himself that Forfur's true identity had to be kept secret from people like Barbatos. Raphael slammed his foot into the ground, and Zagan calmly remarked that it would probably happen now. Raphael smiled a sinister smile, and one of his companions lost consciousness. Barbatos rushed to attack him, but Zagan stopped him, saying that he did not think Raphael had come to fight. He then invited Raphael to join them at an empty table. Raphael replied that the new demon lord seemed to be a composed man. After he sat down, Zagan asked whether he needed anything from him. Raphael introduced himself first, then said he had heard that Zagan had killed one of his comrades. Zagan understood that he meant Shasti, and replied sarcastically that, although he might not look as intimidating as Raphael, things were not as the rumors claimed. Raphael laughed and said that Zagan truly looked as wicked as the rumors described. Zagan replied that Raphael's hobby seemed to be killing sorcerers, yet there were two right in front of him and he had not killed either of them. Raphael answered disdainfully that he only killed those who caused trouble. Zagan was surprised, because that was not the story he had heard. Raphael then asked whether Shastia was strong. Zagan replied that he was not sure, but at the very least she was stronger than anyone Raphael had killed before. Raphael said that this made her a serious threat to the castle. When Zagan asked what he meant, Raphael explained that her objection to the operation to eliminate Zagan was more than enough reason for the castle to decide to eliminate her. Zagan was taken aback that she had done that for his sake and had put herself in danger despite being able to feign agreement. Raphael stood up and said he had finished what he came for. Zagan realized that he had come only to determine whether she was connected to him, in order to find a reason to kill her. He told Raphael that Shastil had friends in this city who would suffer greatly if she died, that this city was within his domain, and that he would destroy Raphael if he killed her. Raphael laughed and left. Barbatos told Zagan that he should have driven Raphael away and killed him. Zagan replied that Barbatos should do it himself. Barbatos was startled and asked whether Zagan wanted him to die. Zagan answered yes, then corrected himself and said that he meant for Barbatos to go and check on Shastil, since he was faster thanks to his instant teleportation sorcery. Zagan returned home to find Nefi and Four waiting for him, though Four was exhausted and had fallen asleep. Nefi told him that she had spent the entire day organizing his library so that he could read more easily. Barbatos arrived by instant teleportation carrying Shasti, who was unconscious, and urged them to save her quickly because she had been poisoned. Four woke up at the noise, saw the great sword with Shastil, and became violently enraged. She transformed her hands and rushed to attack her, but Zagan stepped in front of her and seized her hand. When she demanded to know why he stopped her, he asked whether Shasti was the one who had killed her family. Four replied that it was someone who wielded a great sword who had killed them. Zagan said that he understood, but that Shastil was not the one responsible, and that killing her would not affect the one she sought revenge against. Instead, it would only create an enemy and block her path to vengeance, a mistake commonly made by beginners. Four asked angrily what he knew about revenge. Zagan replied that true revenge was making your target suffer, despair, and tremble, forcing them to beg for their life, and then killing them if you wished. When she asked whether he had ever taken revenge himself, he said yes, but that he had failed and killed his target in a single instant, feeling no improvement at all. That was why he would teach her how to take revenge properly. And fortunately, the castle was full of instruments of torture. Four calmed down and agreed. When Shastil regained consciousness, she found Zagan before her. He told her to thank Nefi, who had treated her after she was poisoned. He asked whether she had any idea who was responsible. She answered that she was not sure, but that she had received an anonymous message and had met a masked person from the castle who told her that there was a group supporting coexistence between sorcerers and knights. Since she had defied the castle, she needed protection, and if she was ever in danger, she was to call the name Europa, whether that was the name of the person or the leader of the group. When she returned to her room, she found a teapot, and after drinking from it, discovered that it was poisoned. Zagan asked whether she suspected anyone, and she said she thought it was Raphael, but Zagan doubted that, since a man like him would have simply cut off her head without resorting to tricks. He told her that as long as she was a friend of Nefi, she could stay here as she pleased. The next day, Shastil appeared wearing a maid's outfit, clearly angry. Zagan told her that he had said she could stay as she liked, but he had never said it would be free. She noticed Four glaring at her angrily and tried to speak to her, but Four ignored her and ran away. Zagan explained that one of the bearers of the sacred swords had killed Four's family. Shastil asked whether it would be better for her to leave, and Zagan replied that she should leave Four alone for now. Shortly after, Shastil's scream was heard when Four threw a frog at her. Zagan mocked her, saying that Four was trying to bother her without using her power because she was still a child. Four then threw more frogs, and Shastil panicked. Zagan found it strange that a great knight would be afraid of frogs and walked away. That evening, Four was writing in her diary in her room, recalling her attempts to harass Shastil, and thinking to herself that she was very weak despite being a knight. Zagan entered her room and told her to control herself and to stop pulling pranks during work hours or while preparing meals. She replied that she knew and remembered that he had told her not to kill her. He answered that this was correct, but that anything else was allowed. He then asked whether she truly wanted to stay here, for was startled by the question and hesitated. Zagan told her that if there was something she needed to do and did not want to say, it was fine for her to do it, and reminded her to always remember that he and Neffy would be waiting for her. After a short while, For awoke from a nightmare from her childhood, she saw herself as a little girl waking to find her father dead before her, with a knight standing beside him wielding a great sword. She rose in fury and stormed toward Shastiel's room, consumed by rage, yet instead of killing her she pinched her cheek and returned to her own room, where she began writing in her diary. She wrote that Zagan had asked her whether she wanted to become his daughter together with Neffy, and that this had been an enormous shock to her. She also wrote that ever since she came to the castle it had been filled with mysteries, but she had understood one thing clearly: the warmth she felt in her chest whenever she was here. She had come to love life in this palace, the kindness and gentleness with which she was treated, and everything Zagan had taught her. Yet she admitted that staying here would make her forget her revenge, and that was something she could never allow to happen, and so she decided to leave. Thus ended the Demon Lord's observation record. The next day, Neffy rushed to Zagan in terror and told him that For was no longer in the castle, for had gone to the castle of the former Demon Lord, carrying in her heart the hope of finding the power needed to kill a knight who wielded a great sword. Suddenly, Raphael appeared behind her and remarked that he had not expected to find a Demon Lord's castle in a place like this. For flinched and looked at him, saw the great sword, and realized that he was the knight who had killed her father. Her rage erupted and she lunged at him, but Raphael drew his sword and struck swiftly, for realized then how much weaker she was than him. Just before she was killed, Zagan appeared, blocked the blade, and told her that although he had said she could do as she pleased, he should have stopped her from coming here. Raphael was astonished that Zagan could halt his sword so easily, for asked how he had arrived, and Zagan replied that he had access to a very good means of transport, so he asked its owner to send him to wherever she was going. Barbatos then appeared, objecting that he was not a means of transport, for interrupted them, and asked Zagan why he was saving her even though she had betrayed him. He answered that he understood her feelings and told her not to worry, for burst into tears and clung to him. Zagan looked at Raphael and said that he had warned him what would happen if he crossed the line. Raphael laughed mockingly at the idea of a sorcerer helping someone else. Zagan replied plainly that For was his daughter. Raphael then activated the great sword, cracks spreading through Zagan's magic circle, and declared that this sword had once defeated a demon lord and burned away all his sorcery. For asked Zagan why he was provoking him, and Zagan replied that he had promised to teach her how to take revenge properly, and that the first step was to make her target unleash all his power, then destroy him, for that was the path that led him to despair. Zagan charged at Raphael with a magic circle, which Raphael blocked with his sword, only to be shocked that the circle did not shatter. Zagan thought to himself that he had touched a great sword before, and through the legacy of Marcosius had learned new defensive techniques against such blades, for demanded angrily whether he expected her to believe such a story, and Raphael replied that he understood her doubt, for he himself had believed that demons no longer existed until a demon appeared and caused the deaths of many knights and a great dragon, and there was now a strong possibility that the demons would return. Zagan said that he had encountered the shadow of a demon and did not know whether they intended to return to this world or not, but they still existed, and that was why he had been searching the ancient texts for a way to confront them. For asked whether her father had fought a demon and lost, and Raphael answered that he had not lost, but had defeated the demon at the cost of his own life. She asked angrily whom she was supposed to hate, and Raphael replied that she should feel pride rather than hatred, for Orobas had sacrificed his life to protect her and the world she lived in. Raphael said that if killing him would restore her pride in her father, he would accept it, then added that demons were a grave threat, and if they returned to a world torn by conflict between sorcerers and knights, humanity would have no chance to survive. That was why Orobas had told him to live, forcing him to do something he had never wanted to do, the very scene she had witnessed of him drinking his blood. He then turned to Shastiel and said that his duty was nearing its end, that others had begun to believe in reconciliation, and that the conflict that had lasted for thousands of years had to end so that all might survive what was yet to come. After a brief pause, Barbatos said that he did not expect anyone to believe what Raphael was saying, and Raphael replied calmly that he was right, that he did not deserve to carry the banner of reconciliation, and that for this reason he had decided to entrust that mission to Shastiel. Shastiel immediately objected, saying that she had not yet agreed to any of this, but at that moment the stone monster moved once again, and Zagan decided to deal with it himself. Raphael stopped him, warning that this was not merely a stone monster, but a being created from a demon, and that he believed it was the very demon he and Orobas had fought before, whose corpse Marcosius had taken and transformed into this guardian. The monster unleashed an enormous amount of mana, and Shastiel rushed forward and blocked the attack with her sword. Zagan seized the opportunity, charged at full speed, and struck it with his new spell, noticing that the black mist within it was what controlled it, but the shattered rocks detached from its body and suddenly attacked him, forcing Shastiel to intervene and cut them all down. Zagan lunged again, this time targeting the mist inside the monster, and it dispersed completely. Shasteel asked him what he had done, and he explained that it was a new sorcery he had devised, a shield that absorbs mana to increase durability, but that he had reversed its function and implanted it inside the monster to drain its mana, though it still required further refinement if he were to use it against a true demon. At that moment, 4 called out to Zagan to save Raphael, who had lost his left arm, and Zagan attempted to heal him with sorcery. Raphael then told Shasteel that he had just witnessed the fastest swordswoman among all the knights, and that those who shared his ideals would support her with their strength. Shasteel asked whether he had used the name Urabas because no one would have believed him otherwise, and he replied that this was part of it, but that the idea of forming a reconciliation faction had originally been Urabas's, and that thanks to that idea he had been able to continue living, finding no better name for their leader than his. For angrily asked why he had killed so many knights, and Raphael answered that he had not done so out of a desire to kill, but had tried to speak with them and reach an understanding, even smiling to show his goodwill, only for them to attack him the moment they saw that smile, leaving him no choice but to defend himself. Zagan reacted with disbelief, saying he had not realized how much evil Raphael had radiated when he entered the cafe, to which Raphael replied in surprise that he had only been there to warn him about the danger threatening Shasteel. Shasteel then asked whether his mentioning the number of sorcerers she had killed when they first met was part of that, and he replied that she could not have become a leader if she had killed as he did, and when she said that such a number was nothing to be proud of, he knew she was the right person. Zagan snapped at him, telling him to look at himself in the mirror because his appearance completely contradicted his intentions. Raphael told Shasteel to return to the castle and said that he would deal with those who wanted her dead. When she asked whether he knew who had tried to poison her, he replied that she would be surprised if she had not already noticed. He then turned to 4 and asked her to claim his head after he finished his final mission. 4 asked him what the dragon Urobas had been like, and he answered that he was a magnificent dragon, and that the moments he spent fighting alongside him atop his back were the proudest moments of his life. With that, he left. Zagan asked for whether she was satisfied now, and she replied that she was still unsure whether killing him would have been right or not, and Zagan told her that she had done the right thing. They then returned to the castle, where Nefi welcomed them warmly. Elsewhere, Clover asked the knights whether they had found Shasteel, and when they answered no, he said he was deeply worried about her and ordered them to continue searching. After they left, he muttered angrily, wondering why she would not die, furious that Raphael had interfered and returned her sacred sword. Suddenly, Raphael entered, and Clover asked about his arm, only to receive a dismissive response. Suspicious, Clover decided to take precautions and smeared a strange substance on his hand under the pretense of medicine, approaching Raphael, but Raphael instantly severed his hand, saying that he did not like being touched by a hand tainted with poison. Clover screamed in agony as Raphael placed his foot in his mouth and declared that this was the first time he truly intended to kill someone, that meddling in the next generation and destroying their future was unacceptable, and then he killed him, saying that he would follow soon. The next day, Shasteel was saddened when she learned that Clover was the one who had tried to poison her, and everyone tried to comfort her, while Zagan joked with her. She said that she had almost poured out the tea Nefi had made, and Zagan replied that Nefi had not been the one who prepared it. Shasteel stood before 4 and said that they had not had a proper chance to talk since her arrival. But 4 was still uneasy and afraid. Shasteel told her that it was all right and that she did not expect them to get along quickly, then turned toward the door when 4 suddenly asked her to visit again. Shasteel burst into tears of joy, thanked Zagan for letting her stay, and said that she was not sure she could lead the reconciliation faction, but that she would do her best to make the world a better place. Suddenly, Raphael placed his hand on her shoulder and told her that he was proud of her, causing Shasteel to recoil in shock, having not known that he was still alive, and to grow irritated at how naturally Raphael and Zagan spoke as if nothing had happened, or as if Raphael's presence in the castle were normal. Raphael told her that he had left the knights and become a servant of Zagan. A little later, 4 asked Raphael whether he missed his arm, and he replied indifferently, prompting her to bring her own armored arm and apply sorcery to it, allowing Raphael to use it as if it were his own, which delighted him. Shasteel bade them farewell and departed. Barbados then appeared, having just woken up, and told Zagan that he was hungry. Zagan told him that he wanted him to watch over and protect Shasteel in exchange for payment, and Barbados transformed into a shadow and merged with hers. The next day, 4 opened her diary again and wrote that she had never imagined she would write in it again, but that she had returned to the castle and was now fine, better than before. She recorded the events of the past 2 days, how they had spent enjoyable time together, and how they went to the city one day to buy supplies, with people gazing at them in admiration. Zagan noticed that Nefi had adapted to the city's atmosphere and now moved about confidently. They passed by Maniola's shop, and Nefi gave him some sweets she had made, where Zagan noticed a phonograph and was astonished, since such an item should have been a rare relic. Maniola told them it was broken, and that street children had tried to sell it but, failing to find a buyer, had left it with him. Zagan remembered his own days as a street child and decided to buy it, paying a bag full of money, shocking Maniola, but Zagan said that a little sorcery would be enough to fix it. They returned to the castle to find Chastille and Barbados waiting, and they welcomed her warmly. Chastille told Zagan that she had been busy because Clavel's death had been announced as an accident, and she had taken care of the duties he left behind. Zagan sat beside Barbados and told him that he knew he was not invited, to which Barbados replied irritably that it would not hurt him if Zagan ate him. Meanwhile, Nefi, Chastille, and Four cooked together, while Zagan went to his room to repair the phonograph. Barbados entered, complaining that watching over Chastille was exhausting because she constantly made trivial mistakes at night, knocking things over or stumbling, forcing him to save her, and that at this rate either she would die or he would from exhaustion. Zagan replied that he did not mind Barbados dying, then reassured him and promised him all the drinks he wanted. Chastille tasted Nefi's cooking and was shocked by how bad it was, but Nefi tried to smooth things over. That evening, Zagan played the phonograph, and everyone enjoyed the music and ate together. Barbados teased Chastille, and when he tasted the soup she had made, he lost consciousness, prompting Nefi's surprise and a mischievous smile from Four, who had slipped it to him, while Nefi realized just how terrible Chastille's soup was. Later, Nefi entered Zagan's room as he adjusted the phonograph and told him how much she had enjoyed the day, as it was the first time they had hosted so many guests and shared a meal together. She asked why he had bought the phonograph, and he replied that it was a whim, and that he wanted her to enjoy music as well. She said that he always looked sad when thinking about the past, but that today had been different, and he told her that when he lived on the streets, he had no home and no food, but he had friends with whom he shared bread. Realizing that he had not been as alone as he once believed, he wondered to himself whether he would find anyone he knew if he returned there. He asked Nefi whether she would mind placing the phonograph in the street, and she agreed, and they sat listening to music together until Nefi suddenly began to sing, greatly impressing Zagan with her voice. The next day, the people of the city enjoyed the music as Zagan placed the phonograph in the street, and the children danced happily as if at a festival, and thus, Zagan and Nefi lived happily. And here, the tale comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you would like a second season, tell us in the comments, and do not forget to like, subscribe, and activate notifications to follow all new content. Farewell.